morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
If you were with us last week, you heard part one of a memorable visit I had with the late Ken Hurlburt, cattleman, rancher, auctioneer, businessman, and politician. And this week, I'm really happy to share more of that visit.
And they trailed about 700 cattle in here for our first sale.
The working cowboy and the ranch owner he works for is the subject of another one of Baxter Black's great contributions today.
He probably wouldn't have much sympathy if you bucked off one of his colts, but if your wife's in the hospital, he'll make sure you have everything you need.
Lots of interesting items on the Rangeland News, including one for forgetful grillers.
But you forgot to take the hamburger patties out of the freezer.
And I love this week's piece of cowboy poetry from the master reciter Randy Riemann.
An early autumn snowfall has whitewashed distant peaks, and the cattle sensing winter leave the high ground in retreat.
A few small things you can do to get those advanced maneuvers working a way better with your horse on the horse training file. And regarding the music this week, you'll hear one from Ken Hurlburt's favorite singer, a classic Song of the West from Don Edwards, and a couple of brand new releases, one from Tom Cole and this one from Barry Ward.
Come on, let's ride down the Kings Highway. Come on, let's ride down the Kings Highway. Oh, come on, all you cowboys, won't you ride along with me? I'll take you to a place like you ain't never seen, a land where the milk and the honey flows. I'm telling you, boys, I can't wait to go. Let's ride down the King's Highway. Let's ride down the King's Highway. Let's ride down the King's Highway. Come on, let's ride down the King's Highway. Come on, all you cowboys, won't you ride along with me? I'll take you to a place they call eternity, a land where the grass is belly high and ain't nobody gonna ever die. Let's ride down the King's Highway. Come on, let's ride down the King's Highway. Let's ride down the King's Highway. Come on, let's ride down the King's Highway. Down the King's Highway.
And now let's take you back to the coffee shop at the Fort McLeod auction market many years ago and continue the conversation with Ken Hurlburt.
I think the fellowship was out of this world, and of course everybody loved to sit around, and we all get back, and you'd go back to the hotel room and have a few drinks and go out and eat together, and friendships that were made back then, they've lasted right till now. And just like you're talking about the one guy over there, Slim Dorn from Kamloops, and Lou Williams and all those fellows. Well, we met them years and years ago, and they've been friends ever since.
Sometimes when a guy is a little bit new to the cattle buying game, I think these old-time buyers will tend to educate him or initiate him a little bit, and I know there's probably some stories about some of the things they used to do some of these new guys. Can you recall any ways a new buyer might get initiated into the game?
Oh yeah, they would, they'd make sure that those cattle were going to cost him plenty of money lots of times, but these guys were always good. I still say that the greatest bunch of guys I ever met, and honest as the day is long, these cattle buyers, and they had fun in their jobs too, but it was mostly pranks that they played in these guys, but it was a lot of fun.
Anybody ever try and play any on you that they got the best of you on, or were you always too quick for them?
Oh no, I wasn't always too quick for them. We had some great old times here too in the sale ring, and God, think about when I think back to the days he rode the steer in the ring, and there's other days when these cattle buyers had come in, and I remember one time in particular I did a little stint in politics, and I had some of these guys come in and from the east, and they come into the ring, and I'm there, and I want to introduce them to everybody. Well, as soon as they came into the ring and I was going to introduce them, well, all the buyers got up and walked out of the ring and left me there by myself. Things like that, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
As many of you know, Ken served in federal politics for a while as a member of Canada's federal government, and you'll hear what he had to say about that when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. We are remembering Ken Hurlburt again this week with more highlights from a conversation we had in the coffee shop of the Fort Macleod auction market many years ago. Now, besides his long list of accomplishments in the cattle industry and in the business world, Ken was mayor of Fort Macleod for 4 years, and he was twice elected Progressive Conservative Member of Parliament from 1972 to 79. How did you find that political career? It was a bit of a step from the cattle industry, I guess, but in a way, you should have had the background that could bring a lot of things that the political arena probably needs.
Well, I learned that wasn't for me, but I have no regrets. I met a lot of fine people, and I met a lot of hard-working people, and I guess I come to the same conclusion as you have and a few others. Maybe this democracy isn't at all it's cracked up to be, but by golly, I don't know of any country that has anything any better. And I think there's some improvements have to be made here, regardless of what political stripe you are, and I think there's things that we'd all like to see change in this country, and there's only one way we can do it is getting good people to run. And I wish I kind of had been that chemical makeup that maybe I could have stayed there the rest of my life, but I don't know whether I could have stood it. I missed it here, I really did. But I had a great time looking after my constituents and have no regrets that I had that little experience.
There's another kind of a cowboy politician. In fact, he's one of the fellows that said if you ever get out to Alberta, be sure and look up Ken Hurlburt and talk to him, and that's Lorne Greenaway. And I suppose maybe you and him go back a ways.
Oh boy, old Lorne and I, he was one of the great guys. When Lorne and I first met, I think he was managing a big ranch over there for Bennett's out at Kelowna.
Right.
And boy, did a great job too, and we used to move a lot of cattle for him, and he was just a great man to do business with, and we got along well, and I used to move a pile of cattle out of that area. Yeah, I really did.
He told me quite a few stories of his veterinary days when, and I think Lorne claims that most of these stunts were pulled on him, but I think he probably asked for it a few times, but he had some pretty good ones when they were preg testing, and he'd roll up balls of cow manure and fire them at the cowboys and that kind of stuff. And every once in a while, they'd slip in a yearling steer for him to preg test and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, just before you hear some more colorful memories about another well-known icon in the cattle and rodeo world from Ken Hurlburt, here's a neat song that I think was written by Sid Martin, done here by David Wilkie and Cowboy Celtic with the beautiful voice of Denise Withnall, and the guitar playing of my little brother Jim on Other People's Cattle.
Met the old man on the streets of town, didn't look to me like he belonged. bought him a beer that winter night. He told me something of his life. He said, my money's getting lonely from lack of company, and my old truck is tired of defying gravity. The kids all call me Patches as round this town I go. I'll blame that on my mother for teaching me to sew. And I'm all stove up from 50 years of days spent in the saddle. I spent the best years of my life raising other people's cattle. I went down to the wishing well and I threw a penny in. A face I didn't recognize looked up at me and grinned. But I get dressed up for Leo's bar, I take a weekend chance. I'm too old for the ladies, but I'm not too old to dance. Though I'm all stove up from 50 years of days spent in the saddle, and some of them were good days, boys, raising other people's cattle. Must be 30 years ago, Ginny's pony hit that badger hole. I cursed myself, I cursed my God. Ginny whispered, it's not your fault. Our son lives in the city now, and so I've carried on, it seems. It's not as lonely as you think. She comes to hold me in my dreams. I'd hate to calculate the miles of barbed wire I've strung, beloved stock dogs I've outlived and ponies I've worn down. And they laugh to see what the sun has done to this weathered old redneck, and how the rope that took my thumb has left my hands a wreck. But I wouldn't trade my memories, you know the townie makes me shiver. He drinks his whole life from a glass, but I drank from the river. My riding roping days are done, I don't know why I keep that saddle. We help to feed this country, boys, raising other people's cattle. We help to feed this country, boys, raising other people's cattle.
Well, when we enjoyed that visit with Ken Hurlburt so many years ago, there in Fort McLeod, another well-known name in rodeo and ranching circles came up, and that provided more colorful memories from Ken.
Warren Cooper, I can remember back in, must have been 52, 53, somewhere around there, when they first started putting on real high-caliber rodeos in Edmonton, at least the first time in my lifetime, and Warren Cooper was doing the rodeo announcing back at that time.
Oh, it really was, and you know, it didn't matter where you went, everybody knew Warren Cooper, and I used to get such a bang out of him. We'd be heading down to East End or Maple Creek or to a sale, you know, and old Coop, he'd crawl in the back seat and he'd go to sleep and I'd drive, and then we'd stop and we'd get up and have a coffee, and we'd get to East End and he'd jump out and he'd walk through the yards and go back and have another snooze again, and then when the sale started, he'd get up and sell, and then when he come back down, he'd lay down in the back, and I used to get a bang out of him, and I said, God darn, Coop, I don't know how you can sleep so long. He says, Ken, I learned one thing early in life. He says, never run and if you can walk, and he said, never walk if you can crawl, and never crawl if you can lie down.
Well, you know, this whole southern Alberta ranching country is just full of great names and institutions in the cattle business and in the horse industry, and I'm sure you probably got to know a lot of them from the early days until now.
Oh boy, I sure have, and great guys. Just some of the greats, you know. I think about our first sales here, and even a lot of cattle. And when we first started here, as late as 1953, when we opened this place, we still trailed a lot of cattle in here. We had Eddie Ivins, who was the manager of the Seaway Ranch out here, and they trailed about 700 cattle in here for our first sale. No, Eddie, he was a cowboy right from the word go, and a good one, and he managed all the cattle out here on the Pig End Reserve.
We'll have more from this conversation in just a little while, and Baxter Black has a great commentary on the life of a working cowboy and his relationship with the ranch owner, and we have a brand new song from Tom Cole's latest album that was just released this week, and then it's the Rangeland News when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at hiring a cowboy. What holds the loaded 30,000-pound trailer to the heavy-duty truck? What holds the 38-foot RV trailer to the dually? What holds the 2-horse trailer with your daughter's favorite pony to the half-ton pickup? Well, the odds are it's a B&W trailer hitch, probably a turnover bowl, American-made, employee-owned, customer-tuned, and proud of their part in America's greatness. B&W, holding things together down the road. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl. Here it is in the want ads. Wanted, cowboy. No TV, no phone. If you don't like dogs and can't tough it in the mountains, don't apply. Alamo, Nevada. Well, I'd like to meet the old boy that wrote that ad. You can almost picture him in your mind, can't you? We're all acquainted with somebody that fits his description. He might be willing to give you a month off to go see your ailing mother, but you better not ask for every Saturday and Sunday off to go roping. And he's not liable to sit down and give you a 2-hour lecture on his range management theories, but you work beside him for a year or two, and you'll learn more about protecting the environment and working with nature than you'd read in 1,000 BLM pamphlets. He probably wouldn't have much sympathy if you bucked off one of his colts, but if your wife's in the hospital, he'll make sure you have everything you need. He'd look the other way if you got picked up by the deputy for getting rowdy in town. But if you don't get the salt scattered in the right place, you know there'll be hell to pay. Well, the person that answers that ad ought to know better than to sit down and start asking about paid holidays, days off, cost of living escalators, and a 5-year contract. However, if I don't miss my guess, he'll get a day's pay for a day's work, good grub, a warm bunk, and that kind of family feeling that comes with ranch cowboying. And there's plenty of good hands that could answer that ad and fit right in. And if he gets the job, you can bet your silver snuff can lid that he's a cowboy. A reporter asked me a while back if I was a cowboy. I said, no, I'm not. That name is reserved for them that make their living punching cows. Didn't bother me to be mistaken for a cowboy. Matter of fact, I'm proud of it. But that honor belongs to that particular feller who gets up every day, puts on his spurs, and goes to work. Them that writes cowboy and the blank space after occupation on their IRS form is what I'm talking about. Real cowboys, the backbone of the cattle business. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl.
Ranchers, farmers, and producers from around the world come to Farm Fair International to meet, do business, and drive innovation. It's where the top show stock competes, the best deals are made, the sales are supreme, and the future of agriculture all comes together. Join us at the Edmonton Expo Center this November 9th to 13th. Learn about all the show and sales programs and get your tickets at farmfairinternational.com. Well, his voice has been described as being big, warm, rich, soft, expressive, and he's been compared to Don Williams and Jim Reeves and others. But Tom Cole has his very own distinctive sound, and when he releases a new album, it's instantly in high demand. And here's one he wrote for his latest CD just released this week called Alberta Blue.
Let me sing you a picture of an Alberta sky. It's as wide as the world. It's about twice as high. First the golden pink sunrise warms the land with its hue, and a new day begins, wrapped in Alberta blue. When the sun meets the mountains, those blue Rockies they ignite, and an Alberta day becomes an Alberta night. And the northern lights dancing, oh, they shimmer and shine. And a big prairie moon rides a big prairie sky. Out on the plains, an old cowboy sings a song to his herd, and the stars hung on velvet twinkle with every word. Let me sing you a picture, and I swear that it's true. There's nothing as wondrous as Alberta blue. There's nothing as wondrous as Alberta blue.
News of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West. We'll tell you what's new under the western sky right after this word from the cattlemen of Western Canada.
Ranching is an important part of our community. From farm to fork, it takes a year and a half to bring beef to your table. It all begins with a calving in the spring of the year. After 6 months in their mother's care, calves are weaned and begin a feeding regimen where they are fed both hay and grain. Ranchers are proud to provide wholesome beef for BC families.
Now, the Rangeland News, top of page 1. You know, the biggest percentage of beef from cattle we raise probably goes into hamburger, the very popular favorite of fast food restaurants and home cookouts. And I got to admit, the taste of a well-seasoned burger patty done properly on a barbecue is hard to beat. But what do you do if you forget something important?
Oops, you're running late. Your cookout guests are here already and hungry, and they're saying, yeah. Oh, all right, but you forgot to take the hamburger patties out of the freezer.
A hamburger patty that's frozen will still cook fairly quickly.
Well, that's good. Mary Ann Gravely with the Agriculture Department's Meat and Poultry Hotline says nobody will know those patties were frozen when they hit the grill, and you won't end up with patties that are black and crunchy on the outside, undercooked on the inside if you
start them out on the perimeter of the grill where it's a little bit farther from the heat source, and then gradually move them directly over the heat source as they thaw and are starting to cook.
But she says be very careful with those patties. Check them with a meat thermometer to make sure they're up to an internal temperature of 160 degrees before you serve them. That'll kill any bacteria that might be in the patties. More information, call the Meat and Poultry Hotline, 1-888-MP Hotline, 1-888-MP Hotline. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Canada's Federal Agriculture Minister Lawrence Macaulay announced $35.3 million available for infrastructure at the Swift Current Research and Development Center. Construction of new laboratories has been underway since May of 2015, but the project had not previously been announced. The minister said the government is committed to research and recognizes the role the Swift Current Center plays in particular in making Canadian farmers efficient and competitive. Today's farmers produce twice as much as they did a century ago on half as much resources thanks to research and development, he said. So there's good news for our listeners at CKSW in Swift Current, where you hear us every Sunday afternoon. Well, it looks like Deere & Company will not be going ahead with their acquisition of Monsanto's precision planting farm equipment business, at least for a while. The U.S. Justice Department has filed a lawsuit aimed at stopping Deere & Company from buying Monsanto, saying the deal could make it more expensive for farmers to use fast, precise planting technology. Deere said in a statement that it would fight the lawsuit and that the Justice Department's antitrust concerns were misguided. The Justice Department said the proposed deal would mean higher prices for equipment for high-speed precision planting. Several New Mexico State University electrical engineering students are designing a camera prototype that cows can wear. The camera would show how much each animal eats and records distances they cover in a day. And the students will focus on the Raramuri Criollo cattle, a rare biotype that originated in northern Africa and was brought to the New World by the Spaniards in the 1500s. Some of these animals are still roaming the Jornada Experimental Range northeast of Las Cruces. You know, one of the highlights of a visit to the National Cowboy Symposium in Lubbock, Texas a few years back for us was being at the Chuck Wagon Cook-Off and enjoying rolled smoked brisket. Boy, that was tasty. But we have a hard time finding it around here. But now a new study from Texas A&M shows that beef brisket has many healthy traits. Ground beef made from brisket contains high levels of oleic acid, which increases levels of good cholesterol in humans. And one study showed that the good cholesterol, HDL, always increases in men and women fed ground beef high in oleic acid, such as grain-fed beef. The BC Livestock Producers Co-op is proud to announce a recent merger with the Valley Auction Cattle Division. And they'd like to welcome all Valley Auction customers to BC Livestock and encourage everyone to inquire about the services, sale dates, and marketing options. And they do have a truck and trailer based in Salmon Arm. To arrange for hauling of your cattle, you can call Ron Ramsey at 250-318-2802. And to assist in the transition, BC Livestock is offering some Saturday dates in addition to the regular advertised sales. Kamloops, October 15th and October 29th, and in Williams Lake, October 22nd, 2016. Thompson Rivers University is partnered with Calgary's Southern Alberta Institute of Technology and Golden's Kingsclear Ranch on a $1.1 million research project involving the use of drones in the ranching industry. TRU's John Church, the BC Innovation Chair in Cattle Industry Sustainability, is the lead researcher in the project, and he has used drones in wildlife conservation and management, referring to them as flying border collies. The 3-year grant from the National Sciences and Engineering Research Council's College University Idea to Innovation program includes the actual grant of $663,940, along with other cash and in-kind contributions from partners that brings the package to almost $1.1 million. And Dr. Church acknowledged that the work of cowboys, drones, and cow pastures can seem odd to the uninitiated. When he Googled weird uses of drones, he found a taxidermied cat on a drone, a flame-throwing turkey cooking drone, and himself with his ranching research. Well, it's pre-sort sale time at the Innisfail Auction Market, and the regular pre-sort sale's now underway, and they also sell calves and yearlings at the regular Wednesday sales. So give them a call if you'd like to talk about your options. The Innisfail Auction Market, 403-227-3166, and you can see InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And that takes us down to the final item here. These are some handy household hints I got from a guy that we used to ride and chase cows with, good old KP. To avoid cutting yourself when you're slicing vegetables, get someone else to hold the vegetables while you chop. And a mousetrap placed on top of the alarm clock will prevent you from rolling over and going back to sleep after you hit the snooze button. And you only need 2 tools in life, WD-40 and duct tape. If it should move and it doesn't, use WD-40, and if it moves and shouldn't, use duct tape. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Horse Training File, I'll look at a few of the little things riders can do to help their horses master some fairly advanced maneuvers, like flying lead changes, a nice turnaround, and others. And there's more memories of Ken Hurlburt when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Coming up on the Horse Training File, a few ideas to help you master some more advanced maneuvers with your horse, and more of that conversation with the late Ken Hurlburt. Now, Ken had told a lot of stories about the after hours of cattle buyers when they're out on the road, and no doubt there has been the odd poker game played around the table from time to time, and that leads into this song about a poker hand known as the dead man's hand, supposedly the cards that Wild Bill Hickok had in his hand when he was shot dead at a poker table in Deadwood, South Dakota.
I rode in the Deadwood one dark stormy evening, tied up my horse to the rail. Heard the chink of his spurs on the hard wooden sidewalks. A stranger appeared from the dark and shadowy veil. He was all dressed in buckskin with a wide-brimmed sombrero. The wind blew his shoulder-length hair. 2 pearl-handled 6-guns stuck in his waistband. Said if you came here to gamble, you better beware. Keep your eyes on the door, keep your back to the wall. Never you trust any man. Keep one hand on the table, one on your pistol, or aces and eights would be your very last hand. Said his name, it was James, but folks called him Wild Bill. He came to these Black Hills for gold. The cards were his weakness, the guns were his strength, and the women and whiskey he used had taken their toll. He said the one rule he'd live by was the one that he'd broken, and for that mistake he'd pay the price. And if you go in that bar and you sit at the table, you better listen to me and heed my advice. Keep your eyes on the door, keep your back to the wall. Never you trust any man. Keep one hand on the table, one on your pistol, or aces and eights will be your very last hand. I looked down for a moment to uncinch my saddle. When I turned up, the stranger was gone. I walked into the bar, asked about the gunfighter that I had just met on the street. Only moments before, they smiled and they said they hear that same story whenever a stranger arrives. I sat back to the wall, they dealt me a full house, and the words the gunfighter had said ran through my mind. Keep your eyes on the door, keep your back to the wall. Never you trust any man. Keep one hand on the table, one on your pistol, or aces and eights will be your very last hand.
David John and the Comstock Cowboys, Aces and Eights, the Dead Man's Hand. Now, time for this week's horse training file. Watching a great rider work through some maneuvers on a horse that's really connected makes us wonder sometimes, how do they make those smooth transitions, those soft, effortless lead changes, smooth stops and turnarounds? Well, I picked up a few things from some master horsemen over the years, and they really do work. One I really like is the preparation for a flying lead change, and it starts by warming your horse up at a trot in a big circle, let's say to the left, counterclockwise, and then you pick up the left lead in 2 or 3 more circles, making sure you stay on the course, and then drop to a trot and head straight across the center of the circle. And as soon as you drop to the trot, shift your riding position from the left lead to the right lead position. Bring your left leg back in line with or slightly behind the cinch, and move your right leg slightly off and slightly ahead. And make sure you pick up the horse's right eye and make sure that the right side is the active side. And keep his right shoulder slightly elevated so it doesn't drop, and you'll feel him change his body position. And then cue him for a lope, and if you do it right, he'll pick up the right lead. And don't overdo this, but repeat it a couple of times in each direction, and then let him relax and keep these principles in mind. Take time to prepare your transitions. Don't push him into them, just gently massage him into them. Cue him with your seat, your legs, and your hands in that order. Ride his body, don't just take his head and bend it. And as Martin Black said, it's not rocket science, it's harder. And that's the horse training file. And it's not rocket science, but it just makes good nutritional sense. We keep our horses healthy and working well with that daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration. And they've got a whole variety of different packages now for different ages and types of horses. Find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. Now, about that next Spirit of the West cruise coming up in June of 2017, my wife Billy and I will be hosting a great group of Spirit of the Westers aboard the beautiful Holland America ship, the Noordam, and we'll sail out of the spectacular Vancouver Harbor, visiting Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Glacier Bay, and then we'll have 2 spectacular days of sightseeing in Denali National Park. Then we'll board the magnificent McKinley Railroad with their sightseeing domed cars and hopefully have a good look at North America's highest peak, Mount McKinley. And then it's on to Anchorage. We'll have our Western music concerts, sing-alongs, great food, and it's a trip that's been on the bucket list of a lot of folks for a long time. And the whole package includes return airfare from Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver, and includes ground transfers in Vancouver and Anchorage, plus all of our Spirit of the West group gatherings, all port and government taxes, all onboard meals, entertainment, and room service, and a special group reception, lots of networking opportunities, our special Spirit of the West gifts, the highly coveted Spirit of the West t-shirt, and a special Spirit of the West tour just for our group in Juneau. Now here's something else. If you like traveling by rail, we have an optional Rocky Mountaineer rail package to travel from Calgary to Vancouver, available on request. Our entire schedule with prices and everything else is available on the cruise page at our website, hugh-mclennan.com. And you can get all the information at this toll-free number, 1-800-530-0131. Well, as we wound up that great visit there in Fort Macleod with Ken Hurlburt, we looked down the trail at what the future might hold for the cattle industry of North America.
As we look ahead to the next generation of cattlemen coming up, and there are some good young fellows that are getting into the business these days, and just wondering maybe before we kind of wrap this up, what you see for this way of life in the next 50 years. Do you think it'll still be around?
Hugh, I'll tell you, our population is growing. And I'm convinced that this country was built by optimists, not pessimists, and it's going to continue to be that way for as long as you and I live, and as long as this country continues, the great country that it is. And I think we just got to make sure that we always stand behind that free enterprise system, and we promote it to the nth degree, and let's just make sure that it isn't state farms that we create in this country, and and that with that keep that free enterprise alive and going and thriving, because it's not only a good way of life, it's a healthy way of life, and a lot healthier than if we got somebody else running our businesses for us. So I believe in that free enterprise system right from the word go, and there's only one way that we can, I think, not only have health, happiness, and prosperity, but that's the only way that the system's going to work, so it'll go on and on and on for future generations.
Okay, that's a great way to kind of wrap this up, and I was just going to ask you if you got any favorite old cowboy songs from over the years that maybe I can find and dig out and play when we put this program together.
Oh boy.
That's not a question.
I'm not very musical,
Is that right?
And I'm not much of a singer, but I love a lot of this Western music, and I guess now in this day and age I'm a George Strait fan, and I've really enjoyed a lot of his music and a lot of the great singers up till now, but I just can't really pick one out other than him. I'm not very knowledgeable, when it comes to music, but I like good Western music.
Well, we'll find something, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Ken, thanks so much for joining us here in the Spirit of the West, and we know that the spirit of the Canadian cowboy is going to go on for a long time, thanks to fellas like you that have helped to build a foundation for it. I just really appreciate the chance to sit down and visit with you.
Hugh, it's been my pleasure.
I still feel 25 most of the time. I still raise a little cane with the boys. Honky tonks and pretty women, Lord, I'm still right there with them, singing above the crowd and the noise. Sometimes I feel like Jesse James, still trying to make a name, knowing nothing's gonna change what I am. I was a young troubadour when I wrote in on a song, and I'll be an old troubadour when I'm gone. Well, the truth about a mirror is that a damned old mirror don't really tell the whole truth. It don't show what's deep inside or read between the lines, and it's really no reflection of my youth. Sometimes I feel like Jesse James, still trying to make a name, knowing nothing's gonna change what I am. I was a young troubadour when I wrote in on a song. I'll be an old troubadour when I'm gone. I was a young troubadour when I wrote in on a song, and I'll be an old troubadour when I'm gone. I'll be an old troubadour when I'm gone.
Coming up, Don Edwards has this week's classic Song of the West, and then it's the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight shining on Randy Riemann when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Time for another classic Song of the West, and like so many of these old treasures, the origins of this one are lost in the mists of time. The words and the music are printed in my old dog-eared copy of Cowboy Songs and Other Frontier Ballads by John and Alan Lomax, but there's no information on the author or where they came from. Don Edwards says another version of this song was actually recorded by the Carter family with the title Goodbye to the Prairie. And this is Don Edwards with The Dyin' Cowboy of Rimrock Ranch.
Goodbye to my pals of the prairie. Goodbye to the cattle and trail. Goodbye to the morning's first gleaming. Goodbye to the prairie and vale. I'm riding away on life's roundup, where the sun is sinking low. I'm riding away on my brown girl to the roundup where we all must go. Goodbye to the crack of the pistol. Goodbye to the wildlife's world. Goodbye to the rimrock racing. Goodbye to the wild Irish girl. So boys, when you're far from the rimrock, you lean over the canyon below. You can think of the spot where I'm resting for the roundup of the eternal soul. I'm riding away on life's roundup, where the sun is sinking low. I'm riding away on my brown girl to the roundup where we all must go. Goodbye to the cry of the coyote. Goodbye to the calls of the dove. Goodbye to the morning's first gleaming. Goodbye to the girl that I love. Goodbye to the dawning's first blushes that there in the east faintly glow. For the pale rider comes with his summons, and I'm willing and ready to go. I'm riding away on life's roundup, where the sun is sinking low. I'm riding away on my brown girl to the roundup where we all must go. I'm riding away on life's roundup, where the sun is sinking low. I'm riding away on my brown girl to the roundup where we all must go.
And that beautiful guitar picking, of course, done there by Don Edwards as well. Down in Dillon, Montana, you'll find Randy Riemann, still horseback pretty well every day, starting colts, doing clinics, braiding rawhide, and writing and reciting wonderful cowboy poetry. Here's Randy.
I've been extremely fortunate in my life. I've been able to ride in some of the most beautiful landscapes in North America with some of the best cowboys in the business. And I consider it a privilege and a blessing to have made my living as a working cowboy. About 10 years ago, I rode for the West Fork Stock Association, and that's about 100 sections of land outside the borders of Yellowstone National Park. It's got the West Fork of the Madison River running right through it, and I shared my responsibilities there with a man named Todd Burley. We'd go into that camp in the spring, and we'd come out in the fall. It was an extremely beautiful place, and it was a hard place to leave. I wrote this poem about that place and about Todd. The poem's entitled Leaving Camp. Spring's a distant memory now. The green grass turned to brown. The scattered leaves of aspen trees blow golden across the ground. The larkspur and the lupine are faded out and gone. And ice has formed along the banks down at the beaver ponds. An early autumn snowfall has whitewashed distant peaks, and the cattle, sensing winter, leave the high ground in retreat. This snow will melt 'neath autumn's sun before it comes to stay, but the warning's made and heeded. We know winter's on its way. The circling of the sandhill cranes reminds us that it's time to be moving off a summer range and leaving camp behind. The season's nearly finished. Like the cranes, the time flies by. We'll soon be rolling up our beds and shaking hands goodbye. So we linger on the ridges in the sunset's parting rays, and we walk and talk instead of trot, and try to stretch the days. These autumn days we cherish while our youth is on display are the ones we know we'll long for when we're burdened down with age. It's more than nature's beauty that I hate to leave behind. It's a friend who, mile after mile, has ridden by my side from the cold gray light of morning till the long day's twilight end. A good and faithful partner and a trusted lifelong friend. With a handshake and a few brief words, we'll wish each other well, then both go our separate ways to face the winter's chill. But leaving camp ain't easy when it's shared with such a friend. The kind you've been to me, Todd. Hope we share camp soon again. Vaya con Dios, amigo.
Well, I just want to thank you folks so much for making the ride every week, and I sure hope you can join us here next week at the same time. And thanks again to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. See them at meadowsprings.com. And it's Mark that puts all those great visuals together for the webcast of this program, too. Now, be sure to check out the latest issue of Alberta Beef and Beef Illustrated. Great way to stay up to date on the cattle industry no matter where you live. You can subscribe online at albertabeef.ca. And of course, you won't want to miss an issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. Subscribe at cowboycountrymagazine.com or call 1-800-943-7336. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.